Welcome to Section 4, all about applications and operating systems and how we can detect what they are based on the scan data that we receive. This is our first video where we're going to talk about the application detection portion. So how does Nmap figure out what applications on a port? If you're familiar with the idea of application layer firewalls, you know that the port number no longer means, in this modern age, that a specific application is always running on it. That used to be the way back in the day, but not anymore. So port 80 could have a whole bunch of different services running on it. We have to figure out what applications are running on these individual ports. So how does Nmap go about figuring out what applications on each port? It'll start out after determining if a target is up and then sending the port scan to it and figuring out what ports are open. It will then check for excluded ports, any ports that we decided not to scan. It will skip those, and then it will begin a TCP SYN for any TCP ports that it detects. Whenever that open port connects to us, it'll listen for a service banner. So some of these services, such as Telnet and FTP and SMTP, a lot of the older services provide a plain text service banner to provide information about what the application is that's running. Very, very convenient for a scanner. All you have to do is connect and read the service banner, and then you're good to go. So that's the first thing it does. Then it connects to UDP, and it'll check through whatever it can with the UDP. It's a lot tougher to figure it out. It has to really rely on port numbers and whatever information we might get back through ICMP. It's pretty tough. After it finishes with that, it will check for SSL on these TCP connections. Now, something very common in our modern networks is to have things encrypted. So you'll have SSL connections on a lot of these ports. So what Nmap will do is try to connect with SSL on these open TCP ports, and then restarts that service scan to see if there's a service banner. It will then also send any RPC services to an RPC grinder, where it will go through and try and figure out all the things that are on the RPC system. That's kind of a special process that it has, because RPC is very verbose and complex. In order to kick this off, all you have to do is use nmap-sv to start off the application detection. So let's take a look at that. So in my Nmap, I'm going to do a fast scan of my network. And we'll also make this a T5 just so it's really fast. So if you notice here, it'll say port 80 HTTP. Okay, we have UPnP. We have that on 5000 TCP. We have SSH on 22. We have SMTP on 25. Okay, so we know what the service is based on the port number, but that doesn't really tell me what's running. So we're going to use -sv and run the same thing. Now we have a lot more information. Let's take a look up here. We've got a whole bunch of things. Here we have something up on my network running dropbear SSH version 2012.55. That's pretty specific. It figured out that we have an Archer C7 wireless access point. It knows that I'm running Pro FTPD 1.3.3G, the version of OpenSSH, CUPS 1.1, all sorts of interesting things about my network. Being able to scan for those application versions is very, very useful. We're going to build upon that later on towards the end of the course when we talk about scripting, where we take these application versions and other information that it retrieves and pipes that into a vulnerability assessment tool. So what else does Nmap do? Not only does it read that service banner for the services that provide service banners, but the TCP connections, when they connect with that three-way handshake, it's considered a null connection. We have the handshake, but nothing else is happening. What Nmap then does is it sends probes on those open TCP null connections, and it determines what probes it's going to send based on the rarity level for that port. So basically it's the probability of a specific application running on a certain port. So TCP 80, it's usually running HTTP. So some sort of application, Apache, Nginx, whatever it may be, running HTTP on port TCP/80. So Nmap will run that probe first to see if it got anything out of there, because there's no reason running some other random probe on a port that most likely 99% of the time is running an HTTP application. We can take a look at that with the version trace. So we can output the process of what it's doing with this rarity scan. So once again, let's do an nmap-t5-f-d-version trace, and I forgot my SV there, and then we're going to do that on the 97 system. And now we have a lot of information about what it's doing. Nmap is telling us everything that's going on. It's basically like verbose mode, but with some additional information. And you can see that it's creating some socket connections here. I missed a whole bunch of those, but it's creating some socket connections here. It's checking things out, seeing what's running, whether or not things are successful or failures, whether or not SSL connect worked. It's giving us information as to what is not working, different processes it's running, probing that port.